Hello and welcome to stage 2. We are talking about community-driven design, the power of collaboration. My name's Dan Cocking, community lead here at Gravity Sketch. And before joining the mission here at Gravity Sketch, I was creating a footwear design community. So this panel is particularly special to me. A great set of people talking and more than qualified to do so. You're going to learn a lot. When we talk about the around community, we're talking about people who are collaborating in 3D. And I said to the guys before, last year we had 839 jobs represented at Around, which is unbelievable to think of. Could you name 839 jobs? And we're all working parallel to each other. And we, as Gravity Sketch Around, we want to connect all of you to bring better products to life. And that's why this panel is so important. And so no doubt working in the creative space, you're going to be familiar with all of our panelists today. They span from footwear to 3D creation, industrial design, and right across the digital fashion space. So today, we're going to explore the magic that happens when people come together and design, how collaboration sparks innovation, and why it's so important in today's creative industries to collaborate and be part of a community. I'm hoping that you're going to leave this session being inspired to work with a wider community in your workflows and with practical insights on how to do so. So without further ado, I would love to introduce all of our panel. So Julia, David, Michael, Hector, welcome.
What up?
Hello, hello.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
So happy that you guys are here. I've loved our pre-chats and we've had. I'm very, very excited for the value that you're bringing to the audience today. Let's briefly just introduce ourselves first, like your background, how community has played a role in your journey. And why don't we kick us off? Julia, why don't you start us off?
Sure. So, I'm Julia, and my original background is in fashion and art. And I was super fascinated with back then and how the game industry was working with virtual clothing and simulation and virtuality. And that's how I sort of ended up in technology. I worked with in retail technology for a very long time. And I also started the blog and platform that I'm still running, Magic Fabric, which is about the interface between fashion and emerging tech. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you. Great to have you. And David, yourself?
I'm David Filar. I'm in Worcester, Massachusetts. My background is in industrial design, but primarily specialized in footwear design and product creation. I'm the director of product creation and design at Endstate. Alongside, I tell people I'm an artist. I sell commissioned artwork on the side. I host a podcast called An Untold Narrative, which has featured brilliant minds like even Michael and Dan on my podcast. So people should check that out. And I'm stoked to be here. I hope we have enough time for like Q&A at the end, because I think that's where we could bring a lot of value. And I'm stoked to share the stage with Julia, Hector, and Michael, because these are all amazingly talented humans. So let's have a day.
Nice one. Hector, over to you.
Sure. Thank you, David. I love the energy. I love it. My name is Hector Silva. I'm based in Chicago. I'm an industrial designer and an educator. So I have my foot in industry and another foot in academia. So I currently teach at the School of the Art Institute in Chicago. But founded Advanced Design, which is a really big nonprofit organization that focuses on industrial design education. And every day I wake up, we try to disrupt that industry. So that's why we're here. We're here to change the world. So, yeah.
Amazing. And Michael, I'm going to throw you one more question on the tail end of this. So introduction.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But, we're talking about community-driven design. And power of collaboration. So in reference to collaboration, we're going to be using the term a lot, community. I'd love, perhaps after your introduction, to set the tone for the conversation and help us define what we mean by community.
Yeah. So first off, I'm Michael Tanzillo. I am a 3D artist. I've been working for close to 20 years now. The majority of that time was on animated films. So I worked for 13 years at a place called Blue Sky Studios. So I did Ice Age movies, Rio, Ferdinand, Peanuts. Recently, Nimona, which was up for an Oscar last year. Very proud of that. After the studio that I worked for closed, I was a little bit lost. I didn't know where to go. And so I ended up at, but I was lucky and I got a great job at Adobe. So I am the head of technical artists at Adobe. And in that journey between working on film and working at Adobe, I learned about all these other industries like footwear, like automotive design, like fashion, that are using 3D, because I was like stuck in my little entertainment bubble. And after doing that for a couple of years, I wanted to tell more. There was all these 3D artists that I knew that were out of work or in the same position that I was, kind of like lost with their careers. So I started a newsletter called the 3D Artist, and that was designed to like give people more information about it. It became more popular, and people were asking for a community. So I fumbled around with building with community ideas, and I formed this thing called the 3D Artist Community. So the idea is it brings together people from entertainment, fashion, footwear, spatial design, everywhere, so that everyone can come together and get an understanding of what's available in the 3D world, and so that nobody's left feeling like I did, where you're kind of stuck in your career and you're not quite sure where to go. So the community question? What does community mean? I mean, for me, it's about bringing together individuals into a space that they can collaborate, share ideas, push each other, and it's an opportunity outside of your for this. It's an opportunity outside of your normal, what you normally think of as community, being your family, your coworkers, any sort of like religious affiliation, anything like that. So this is a different gathering of individuals under an idea of what you do for work and what you do for your creativity, and then building off of each other that way. And what I found is that it's a lot of people inspiring each other, a lot of people pushing each other and supporting each other on that journey. And I'll open it up to see if others have a better description of it than I do.
Yeah, I can go. Yeah, I think that's a very, very good answer. Community is the reason why I'm here. When I was a young designer, I needed help. I needed support. I needed to be around like-minded people, and that's essentially, community. But when we started community, that's exactly what we wanted to do. We know that community isn't something original. It's been done before. We just wanted to make it better in our own way. We had a vision. We wanted to be around like-minded people, same interests, same values, same goals. And just make sure that everyone in our space had support. So yeah, I really love that answer, Michael, but I think that's what community is to us.
Any other thoughts, guys? If
I nailed it.
No, then we go. No need to carry on. You know what? I would love to get an understanding. We talked about a little bit about what community is, and within that, there's a why, and touched on that within your introductions. But I'd love to get a grasp on why is this such an important discussion? Why is community such an important discussion? And that power of collaboration aspect. Like, why are we here today? I mean, just to maybe prompt some thoughts for you. Just a couple of days ago, I asked the Gravity Sketch audience why they connect with other creatives. And 45% of the creatives are surrounding themselves with other creatives to diversify their perspectives. That's one of many reasons. But I wonder if you guys had further thought into why is this conversation so important?
I guess I can go, but I mean, the general answer, I guess, is like we're pack animals and we like to connect with other people. And I think whether you're an independent designer or creator, or if you're working in a company, you need to connect and build relationships with other people for not only for support, but also for just like for that point of the connection, just knowing that there's other people out there having the same struggles and going through the same things. And I feel like that's become even more evident after the pandemic and after all of that isolation and then being in your homes. But also understanding that that can not only happen digitally, that there's also the need of like physical meetings and connecting physically with people in that sense. And that's something that I personally really understood and also started exploring how can we make people physically come together, and they're not mutually exclusive. But and I guess you can expand also the definition of community to also including users and like customers if you're in a producing role, and having those types of like taking that feedback and interaction into the community as well, I think.
I'm just going to expand a little bit deeper on Julia's point. I think the why behind community, especially today, is the fact that a lot of us creators specifically feel alone. I feel we're surrounded by digital tools, yes, but there is a massive loneliness epidemic across the world, specifically around creators. You know, there are plenty of surveys that showcase 1 in every 5 employees, you know, feel lonely at work on a daily basis. That's like too high. Like that's 20% of people. That's way too high. And so I think people want to surround themselves, as we talked about with what community means, with like-minded people, people that push them. A lot of times they don't know where to start or, you know, put themselves out into an uncomfortable position. And that could just simply be a DM into somebody that you don't necessarily know. And I think our opportunity in this chat and in the future is to really break that like mindset and like allow people and show people that, hey, this is actually very possible. And there are a lot of people who feel just like you, and you could be the person to bring people together. Just to give Michael his flowers on the, you know, his platform on School, you know, with the 3D artist group, it doesn't have to be massive. It's like 50 people, 75 people in there, Michael. And you have some of the most passionate people about just learning and curious. Like they're so damn curious about like these different topics, and you give them a space to do it. Like you're not even part of all the conversations. They can go like run themselves. And like, I think that's what we need more of. And that's why it's so important, is because we're all struggling. We're just not comfortable talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And the thing with the community too is that everybody kind of ends up in their own little bubble at times, and everyone's a little bit different, right? So, you know, whether I've got people in my community who they're the only artist at their place of work, and so they feel very isolated that way. I have other people who are one of many artists, and they don't recognize how they have unique skills because everybody around them has unique skills. Like, so for everybody, it's a little bit different. It's about just stepping outside of your immediate bubble and seeing what other people are up to either gain of understanding. Because that was one thing that, again, working at Blue Sky Studios, I was like, man, everybody's an amazing artist. Or like, Hector's at the School of Art, School of Art in Chicago, which growing up in Chicago was like a dream come true for me, to even like be near that building. And the idea that you're going to be in these spaces with like insane other artists, you kind of lose sense of the fact that you yourself have skill too, and that you have value to a larger community, even amongst other creatives. So being in the community, yeah, it's about connecting in a remote world. Like I'm here in the Bay Area. I don't just live in this jungle. But it's a lot of figuring out how to connect with people in real ways. Because like I work remotely, and lots of my day is Zoom calls. And although I'm talking to people, it's not really a connection most of the time. Usually it's just like hey, I have information I need to give you. Like it's a one-way street or something. And the communities are able to fulfill this more natural conversation that allows you to, again, like understand more than what's outside of your immediate circle from your family, your work, and that kind of thing.
I would say community is a little more organic than we think. Like you're born into a community, so we like have families, right? Like I feel we sometimes forget that as you get older, you know, go to school and you go into your career, and there's things that are missing. And for me as an educator and as a designer, I'm definitely motivated by frustration from what I've seen and experienced. I'm like, okay, there's these gaps that exist. How can I provide a platform to close these gaps for people? Frustration leads to innovation is kind of what I like to say. And another thing that I've noticed, at least in my industry of industrial design, is that there's a lot of gatekeeping. There's a lot of people who are super talented, but don't love to share that, and that's to each their own. But I figured if I'm going to build a community, it's going to be a two-way street. We're all going to learn from each other. It doesn't matter how old or how young you're going to be. Because at the end, everyone wins, and we're all not doing the same thing, especially in 2024. You can create jobs. You can, like, it's insane how many, like you just mentioned that, Dan, in the intro, how many job titles exist. It's happening, and that's thanks to the whole, boom in 2007 after iPhone, where everything kind of just opened up to opportunities. And then in 2020, when COVID happened, kind of the silver lining in that is that it took our local and regional communities and we were able to make them global, because now we jumped online, and COVID kind of normalized us, allowing us to talk to designers from all over the world without having to visit or travel or anything like that. So having an online community is even more special, because now you're talking to designers doing amazing stuff in Europe, South America, Africa, Asia, so like there's no more boundaries. So I love that, about community. So yeah.
And one of the things that I've noticed too is that for me personally, like I struggle sometimes, like if I want to make a transformation, like David's a really good runner. Like he runs all the time. And like if you're around people who smoke like 2 packs of cigarettes a day and never exercise, that would be really hard to get the motivation or the understanding that you can do all this running. Like for me, it's one of those things, like if I was in entertainment and I was like, I want to switch over to industrial design and do 3D that way, but I've never seen anybody do that before, or I'm not around people who do that new job, like I'm kind of lost. Like I'm kind of just like, shooting in the dark. But being in a community, you're generally around people who can tell you their story, and that like foundational story of how I went from point A to point B, and you kind of motivates you a little bit. Like you all have thrown out some studies. I just read a really great one too, that it was like a bunch of college students started school, and they got they were given an article to read about a person that went to that same school that accomplished great things. Half the students who it was like a mathematician and someone who did like great in math. Half the students got an article that said that person had the exact same birthday that they did, and like 40% of those people did better than the other group, because they were able to make like a personal connection to that person, and then it felt more like them. So if you can surround yourself with people who are doing the transition that you're trying to do, whether it's running a marathon, switching careers, learning a new thing, then it makes that transition a lot easier. And that's a really tangible, powerful thing about a community too.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, Michael, like people change people. It's really that simple. And so you can unfollow the person who you see Instagram stories complaining about her $7 Starbucks with the wrong oat milk in it. Like you don't need to watch that. You don't need to consume it. You can consume, if you want to be a better runner, consume people who run more, or people who create 3D or whatever it is, and surround, like the Zellerfeld talk this morning, like they have an amazing Discord community where they're able to help each other. It's exactly that. And so you can all put yourselves in a position, and it could be small, right? Like it could be 1 to 5 people. It doesn't have to be surround yourself with 50 or 100 people, just a micro community. And I think that is so important. And we need to destigmatize like cutting people out of our lives that aren't bringing us value, or aren't supporting our ambitions, or aren't supporting the people. Like if you want to pivot and you change your career after 10 years because it doesn't fuel your fire anymore, like Merry Christmas, go after it. Like we need to destigmatize the fact that like we've had friends for 15 years and they don't support us anymore, but they've been our friends for so long. Like find new friends. There are plenty of people who will support your ambitions. And I think all of us on stage are part of those communities who do support those new ventures that we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I just want to, so we're basically understanding that communities are a way that we can feel a part of something, yes, be inspired by each other, yes, but also they give back to us too, because it allows us to go into avenues by surrounding ourselves with like-minded people and make us better. And ultimately, if we're talking about the creative communities, create better products in the end. And I just wanted to hinge on something that Hector, you said a couple moments ago. You talked about, hey, look, within, you talked about you identifying that within your sector, it's hard to share, or people don't seem to share that often. And you were like, hey, look, I want to make this a two-way street. And And that aspect of sharing is a bit of a controversial one, I would say. Should we be open and transparent with our ideas, or is it really important that we keep some things close to our chest? Or what's the balance for somebody maybe watching in the audience right now saying, hey, look, I want to share more. I want to showcase my work more within the communities that I'm in. How far should they go? What would be your advice there? And maybe start with yourself, Hector.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's a very common question that a lot of my students ask as they're studying industrial design. And honestly, like, be open. The more you are about being open to sharing, that's going to set you up so that when you become a professional, it allows you to be open with your colleagues. It allows you to work on, be part of teams. But at the end of the day, like, people can take your idea and they can, if you share tips on how to use a tool or things like that, no one can duplicate you though. That's the key there. I think, I'm all about sharing. I'm all about sharing my techniques and how I found this, or a shortcut or whatever, secret or whatever magic I bring to the table. But at the end of the day, I know that they can't do what I do, because that's why I'm unique. I'm one of one, just like that person is one of one. And so you can't take that away from someone. So brush away a little bit of that insecurity and be open, because it's going to benefit both people, in the long run. So, yeah.
I'm totally +1 on that one. I think we all carry that fear of sort of giving away important pieces, but I totally agree that, having an idea is one thing and executing that idea is something else. And I think in terms of IP, I think it's because of AI, I think it's gonna be quite a bumpy road ahead we have in front of us. And I think it's gonna be probably changing how we look at IP and how we define it. And it's probably not gonna be so much about like visuals, but rather creators are not only good at like visuals, but actually understanding cultural context, how to place an idea, timing, and like all of that. And I think that's definitely not possible for an AI to replicate. And I think, as you say, it's not even possible for another human being to replicate that process. So I think in 90% of the cases, that fear is probably unnecessary. But if you find yourself like you're doing that too much, or like that you're somehow giving away things that are being stolen, of course, in some cases people do that, but then don't do that with that person again, of course. But I think in general, you get a lot back by being generous in a community, for sure.
I love that. This idea is, on a grander scale, we're actually getting more back by sharing and being generous than we are of the risk of losing. Obviously, we need to be careful with how we say that, because you can have some significant moments that are hurtful to a lot of people. But in general, I like that ethos of actually, being generous, sharing, being part of this community, in the end wins out in the long run, which is really, really cool. Something that we try within Gravity Sketch to encourage people to collaborate more, and we asked, so with that idea of sharing ideas and connecting with one another, and we basically asked, hey, like, why are you not collaborating? And 50% of people said they didn't collaborate because they struggle to find others. And you guys are all community leaders, built fantastic communities in your space. I wanted to ask, like, would you have any advice for people who are looking to collaborate with one another, how to approach each other, how to connect with one another, and ultimately how to share more ideas? David, why don't we pick up with yourself?
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm going to share a very, very tangible example that I did for myself, selfishly, a few years back. I had this idea. I started my podcast 4 years ago because I wanted to talk to more creatives. And so I was like, what's the most selfless way in appearance that you could do that is invite people to talk about themselves, because nobody's going to say no to that, right? And so people come on the show because they're stoked to talk about themselves. And then that in turn builds a repertoire and a relationship with that person, right? And I'm not saying everybody go start a podcast, because there's probably too many at this point, but like there's ways to like tangibly invite people to like have a conversation with you. But more so, that idea then sparked me to be like, okay, well, I have all of these like problems that I'm facing within, you know, my job, within my personal life. How do I surround myself with creatives who are probably going through the same thing and can help me problem solve what I'm going through? And so I simply reached out to, this was in 2022, I reached out to 11 other people, and myself being the 12th person. And I was like, hey, I want to create a cohort of 12 people of like-minded individuals, join on a monthly Zoom call for an hour and a half. The goal is for everybody to show up with one problem they've faced in the past month that they weren't able to solve. Guess what? On those monthly Zoom calls, one of the other 11 people had a solution, whether that's, hey, I'm looking for a PR agent in New York City, and I like have been really struggling to find a decent one. Like, does anybody have a connection? Boom, we'd find a solution for that person, you know. Or, hey, I'm looking to manufacture sneakers. Does anybody have a contact in Asia or in Portugal or in Italy? Boom, we could problem solve that, right? And so it could be very simple of like just inviting to people that you admire and being like, hey, I'm building this thing, you know. Here's what I offer. I offer a safe space to help problem solve and do these things, and people can come together. Once you give them that space, you'd be shocked as to how vulnerable people will get, because it's closed, it's not recorded, it's all these things. And then people will open up, and you'll build lifetime relationships, which then in turn go to like, maybe that's a job in 10 years or 15 years. Maybe that's they become your boss or whatever it is, and they hire you. You know, I think the one thing about community that is never talked about is how long it takes to like actually build. Like, if like we're all on stage because we've built, like, let's call it at least hundreds of people coming together, right? But it starts with 5, 12, 20, right? It doesn't have to be massive. And then do that for a decade, bring people together for a decade, and you'd be shocked. You'd be shocked as to the community that you've built and how much they've supported you because you just gave them a space.
Yeah, that's an excellent point about just like creating, like doing your best to create a space and doing it selflessly. I love the point of like getting people to talk about themselves. Somebody who's been on your podcast, like, now it stung a little bit. No, I'm just kidding. It was great. But honestly, like from my standpoint, one of the things I've even been working on doing the last year or two is just reminding myself how incredible the community is, like the larger community, not like my immediate one, although they're incredible. But like, you can reach out to people, and there's a way of doing it that's very much like, hey, Julia, I've seen your work. I absolutely love it. I love how you did X, Y, and Z. I'd love to talk to you more about that. Or like really engage people, like understand what it is about, like give them a very good reason as to why you're contacting them and what you like about their work and what you would like to talk to them about. And people are so friendly and so open and so good about because and like Hector was saying this, like the people who are worried about like oversharing, they're generally students. They're generally people who are like new to the industry, but people who are secure in the industry understand that, yeah, like ideas are a dime a dozen for the most part. It's execution and it's craft that really nails it in the end. And so people who are more comfortable in their careers or a little further along are happy to collaborate with you and happy to work with you on stuff because they know that. And also we've all been around like other incredible people who are probably better than us. So it's like, so we're gonna, I've got no problem sharing anything that I do because I know that, yeah, it's not what I know. It's not what I know. It's like how I apply it and what I actually do with it. And, you know, it's also like, I know that I'm in anything that I'm doing, I'm baking in my own personal experiences with it and like my own history. And so nobody can really replicate that. So yeah, I would say, I would just, if that was a long rambly way for me to say, make sure you're reaching out to people in this industry. Some people will ignore you. That's fine. They're already ignoring you. They already know you don't exist. So like, go ahead and reach out and you'll be amazed at how many connections you can actually make.
And I think most people would love to have that email from you, Michael, just like saying that I see your work, I like it. And even better, in your case, like you said, David, start with asking for help. Is like, that is, I think, the best approach to actually like be vulnerable and reach out. And like, that's the best way to build a relationship. It's just like a simple thing as asking for help. I think there's even a name for that, like a psychological mechanism is like it's easy to like people that ask for help. So that's a great start, I think.
I appreciate, Dan, that you invited me to be a part of this conversation, but I wish that I can bring the people, the mentors that help me have a seat at this table, kind of to piggyback off of what David said. Like community starts with us, where we surround ourselves with like-minded folks. And there's the people in my community. I see a lot of the times they go on LinkedIn after they go through our programming or they do things, and then they thank me specifically, and I really appreciate that because it's a lot of hard work. But it's kind of like that iceberg, kind of where you only see what you see, but underneath the water, it's like a group of folks who make this happen, and you don't do anything in this life by yourself. And so I myself, even though I'm a part of this general community, I have my own personal community where I talk to them about insecurities. I'm human too, like I also have like flaws, and sometimes it's not even about career stuff. Sometimes it's about adulting. Like, hey, how did you guys manage this or this issue? And honestly, it's a wonderful thing to experience because you know that anything is possible. So,
yeah, I know in my community, like David, you talked about like the idea of bringing people together and like solving technical issues, and like that's incredible because it helps you with your work. I know for us, like last Friday we have a regular meetups. We do AMAs with industry leaders, but then we do like these like kind of just like meetings that are just us, and we do a thing called Rose and Thorn where you say like where your success was this week and something that you're struggling with, and those conversations can go anywhere. Last week we ended up talking for about a half hour, 45 minutes of like when to decide to leave a job. Like I call this like it's like the movie problem of it's like character A is in a relationship but the other person wants them. They always have to make the person they're currently in a relationship like a pure monster, just like the worst human being ever, so that they can make this breakup make more sense. And it's like and when you're in your job, if you had like a terrible job, if your boss was like stealing money from you, you'd be like, yeah, I'm out of this. But it's like, how do you know when to leave a job when their vision isn't quite the same as yours, when the boss is good but not like fully inspiring you, like. And so we had it was in the gray areas, but I gained a lot of clarity into how people approach this kind of thing, because what we discovered is that there are people who tend to stay at jobs for 10 years, and then there are people who tend to like jump around from job to job, and it's like how and neither is right or wrong. It's just like, how do you approach this stuff? So lots of times in the community, it can be about those like soft in between questions that you never really think about and kind of change. Because I'm someone, and I realized I was like, I haven't quit a job since I was like 17 years old. I've just wrote it out at every place I've worked at because I really like people and I like the things that I do. And I just got tired of folding jeans at a Gap in a strip mall. And so I quit a job at 16. That was the last time I quit a job. So unless I'm doing that, then I'm pretty okay, I guess. But yeah, I was just thinking that like sometimes it's not about bringing people together to solve like your technical concerns. Sometimes it's about discussing the softer parts of your career too.
Absolutely. And Michael, you started talking a little bit about actually techniques that or things that you do as a community to engage that community. So, within the audience, there will be a number of people building networks and creative networks and communities of their own. And a lot can be said for actually building a community is one thing, but maintaining engagement and enthusiasm over time is another. So I was wondering, I'd love everybody's opinion on this, but what strategies have you found most effective in building really strong, engaged communities, and how do you keep that momentum going when you get where I'm going?
Yeah, totally. It's because it's so easy. Yeah, it's so easy to build a community, launch a community, name a community, like get it all going. But like 4 years in, like how do you keep it rolling? For me, I have two main things that I do. Number one is I build routines. So every Monday we do this event, every Wednesday we do this event, every Friday we do this thing, and it's like baking those routines into people's schedules. And it makes it feel like it's a part of my week, and it's just like something I do now. It's the same with like, I'm a huge fan of, if you want to do something well, make it a habit, find a way to make it a habit in your day to day. And that way it just becomes like breathing or anything else where you don't think about it as much. And the other part of it is, it can't be all about you. Like, you're the community founder, right? You're the one who's leading it, but it can't all hinge on whether you're doing something or not. For me, it's like, I have like the Monday sessions. I have somebody else in my community, this amazing guy named Andre, who runs the Monday meetups, and I have somebody else who like, and you get, and when people come to you with ideas, it's like, you know, we're I can talk about this too. We have a paid structure where everyone chips in $20 a month, and it goes into a community pool. And then we're like a local government where people propose ideas of what to do with that money, whether it's buying software or like bringing in workshops or whatever. And then once the community approves that, then it's on you, the proposer, to make it happen. Like, I'll release the funds to you, but then you go make it happen, right? So it's a lot of like figuring out ways to diversify it a little bit and make everyone have buy-in in the community. And it's not that it takes pressure off of you, but it's like, it's a more sustainable model than, because I'm a person too. Like, I like to go on vacation. I like to travel. I've got 2 little kids that I adore. I love to spend time with them. Like, the community can't be hanging on whether or not I get sick one day or not. You know what I mean? Like, it has to have a life and energy of its own.
Mm-hmm.
I think this might sound a bit dry, but I think you can treat it like a bit like product development, that it's your product, and to be able to run that product, you need to talk to users and ask for their opinions and prototype and iterate. And whether you do that in an anonymous way, through surveys, whatever, if you call people and ask them what they think, I think that's the way to go, to sort of keep in touch with what people actually want to see and read it and take part of. So that it doesn't become, like you said, Michael, about you. It's not you broadcasting yourself to a bigger audience. It's about like what a collective group of people want to do and experience together. I think that's the way to go.
One thing that we do, similar to what Michael mentioned, we have a lot of engagement. Like I said earlier, it's definitely a two-way street. Like, things happen when we engage with students, but also we encourage our community to engage with us. We don't know everything, and we're extremely transparent about that. So we encourage people to share everything from skills to tools they're using. We have a lot of lectures. Everything that we do is free. The students that have gone through our programming, our job is to then make them into professionals. And so we do everything that we can to connect those dots. Once they become professionals, eventually we ask them to come back and share. So it's like this really nice cycle of, starting and then sharing and succeeding, etc. And then, like Julia said, one of my favorite things about what I do is I reach out to a very small group of students throughout the year, and I'm essentially talking to them one-on-one, and I get to know them. I want to know what their needs are. I want to know, how can we support them? How can we provide resources? And that's just part of, I think that's just a little bit as an educator, like just listening and observing and knowing that you don't have all the answers. So, but how can I listen to you so that...
Can I ask on that, Hector? Why do you choose to have those, what seems like quite intimate conversations over, I don't know, just putting something out in your socials, like a kind of broader survey?
Our community is fairly large. It's easy to feel ignored. It's easy to ignore people. And that's not what we want. We want to make sure that we're creating, yes, you have access to this really big platform, but also you are being heard. And if you are part of this platform and you feel too shy to speak up, that's why I like doing these little intimate kind of like meetups, because it allows me to give everyone a platform to speak up, to share their thoughts. And I learned this during the first year, probably the first month of teaching, is always listen to everyone in the room. Not like, I think it's very common for educators to think that they know everything because you're the person who's teaching, and that is absolutely incorrect, right? So yeah, that's kind of how we want to foster our community, and we want to make sure that we run things in that very same way. So I do everything in my power to be accessible to people, along with my instructors and other people that are supporting, because some of the biggest innovations that have been happening in our community usually don't come from us. It comes from people suggesting, hey, have you thought of this or that?
Mhm.
And it just benefits everyone if you just listen. So
Yeah, totally. I actually just brought up a quote that I was reading yesterday. It's from Virgil Abloh. It's like the whole point of collaboration is that you give and take from each other. That's how you create things that are totally new. And it's this idea of the collaboration driving innovation. And you also mentioned before that actually, are there any significant products on the market today that have been created by only one person? Probably not, right? Outside of perhaps art. And we are working in a field that actually relies on each other and relies on bouncing ideas off one another. But before I move on, David, I wanted to ask if you had any further thoughts in regard to building strategies to build and maintain, great communities that keep that momentum going.
I'll be short. I think the only thing that we didn't talk about and that came up to my mind, which is a little bit different perspective, is like, it's okay to pivot and like change, right? I think all of us over the years have changed dramatically from, the person we were 10 years ago or 15 years ago or 5 years ago. And so when you get, different perspectives, as Hector was mentioning, oh, hey, like I got this idea, they shared an idea. It didn't come from us. It's okay to pivot, right? And like, I think people need to lean into that more, that change is okay. And, I think, Michael mentioned, that I run a lot, and I've started sharing more running content, right? And primarily in my history, it's been design oriented, it's been footwear oriented, but I've pivoted over the past year or whatever, for whatever reason, I am obsessed with running. And so I started sharing it more. But guess what? There are so many people who are in my DMs about like, oh my God, you inspired me to run for 5 minutes today. Not 5 miles, 5 minutes. That is how the start of a community grows and builds. I don't know if I'm building a running community. I'm simply sharing because in my life, there was a transformation and I wanted to pivot, and I started sharing something that was authentic to me. And guess what? It will blossom. People who gravitate towards something like that will pivot with you and grow that community. And I think that's really special. And so my only 2 cents is like, lean into pivots sometimes. Like, it's okay. Like, yes, the structure and stuff, but like, you're talking about building something for years on end. Like, if you're not changing, I think there's probably an issue with that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, your running content is brilliant. It gets me out. Are you running every day? I think you are, right?
It's every day this year. And then for the record, on November 29th, I set across the state of Massachusetts. It's 150 miles to hopefully run 40 miles a day until I reach Boston from New York. So that's the goal, but that's neither here nor there.
Congratulations. I'll be rooting for you for sure. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to touch on a couple of moments ago, Hector, you talked about how actually there's been a change pre and post pandemic on how communities are being built. Julia, you also alluded to the same, and went on to say about the importance of physical connection. I wanted to use that almost to talk about how our world is changing as a result, perhaps, of our world is changing. Our tools are changing, and we're obviously at a festival talking about digital craftsmanship, and a lot of that is the tools that we use. And tools becoming more collaborative. So I want to understand perhaps what's exciting you from the tools that you see around you that can give opportunity to more communities being built, and the way that we can collaborate with one another. Like, what's exciting you in that space? Michael, sorry. We'll kick off with you. That's all right.
Oh yeah. So from a technology standpoint, there seems to be more better platforms for building communities than I've ever seen before. Like that would be my biggest takeaway. Like I know I use School. There are others out there, and it's just like the nice thing about it is before when I first tried to build a community like 15 years ago of people who were trying to work on animated films, like I had to build my own on WordPress and it was janky and it was terrible and it was like held together by masking tape. And if like one person who wrote a plugin for WordPress decided not to support that plugin, the whole thing would have collapsed. But the idea that I can just like have these communities where I can go, people can share their ideas, I can have a calendar of the events, I can have like resources for different courses, I can have all these things like all in one like centralized place has been really phenomenal. So like the idea that online communities aren't just like cobbled together things, and that they're actually like platforms that support it, that are more focused to different needs. I think that's been a big one for me personally and for my crew.
Fantastic. Any others to add from the other guys?
I think that, I mean, now we're talking about technology, just enable community interactions and building communities. I think technology is also enabling collaborative design processes. I mean, it's a little bit less mature and we're not quite there yet where we're like working in complete collaboration globally across countries inside of software. But I think we're moving in that direction. I think we're sort of in a societal transformation from a world where we have like the kind of like sender receiver type of interaction. Everything's becoming so interactive. And I think in terms of design and manufacturing, I think we are even moving, some companies are moving in the direction where they even take in customer feedback into the design process and not only creator feedback. So I think there's a lot that's going to happen in that field. And in terms of that, I think it's inspiring to see people sort of jump on that train and actually try that out. I know it's a more difficult step, but I think even more difficult for maybe the older generations to see that happen, as we have more of a traditional, I do count myself as the older generation, but like we have more of that traditional view of the creator. I decide what's to be created and then someone's going to like or not like that. And that's definitely something we're moving away from, and design is becoming so much more data-driven today than before. So looking forward to see where that's taking us.
I just want to loop back to, in the beginning, Julia, you mentioned like the in-person aspect, which, you know, I know it's great to talk about the different platforms and, you know, it's really suited towards what you're going after, but bringing people together in person, I don't think will ever become second. I think the emotional value and the humanitarian aspect of that is so fundamental for community if you're able to do it. You know, back when I used to work for Vibram, like we started these things, you know, where we like had these, you know, speaker talks, and we'd bring people into the space around Boston, and we'd blast out these invites, and then, you know, okay, the first time 20 people showed up, but then they would go tell their friends after that. And then the next event we would host in the same space, you know, okay, 50 people showed up. By the third one, we had 150 people in there, and we like the fire marshal was going to have an issue with us. Right. And so there's something about like slowly building that fire in person and like building those real relationships, even outside of the digital age. And so, you know, I think there's a lot to be said about in person and, you know, seeing people like Dan. We ran into each other at the material show last year, and like we never met each other in person prior to that. And like both of our faces like lit up, and like it was such a real feeling. And like today we're on another Zoom call together, right? But like you don't know where that relationship and that community is going to go. I think it can only be empowered by making physical connection with people.
I kind of agree with that. And like a big thing that happened to me was I lived in New York for like 15 years, and then I just moved out to the Bay Area a couple years ago. And I found that like they're each amazingly creative places, and I love living in New York. I mean, growing up in the Midwest, like I spent most of my time in Columbus, Ohio, where I never really felt like an artistic community, and I always felt like an outsider, and I always felt like a little bit weird. Being in New York, you definitely fit in. and you kind of get this, you get surrounded by people who are doing other creative, amazing things. And then being in San Francisco, it's like all these like optimistic, future forward thinking people, and you do these meetups, and you're just like, you kind of get involved in that. And it's very important to not only have online communities, but have physical in-person events, and to be in a situation where you're physically surrounding yourself with people that inspire you and that push you a little bit forward. And I know that, like, and I, obviously I do the online community because I want to touch people, get to people all over the world. But it is like I did my first like in-person meetup this year at SIGGRAPH. And it was like, I mean, like hugging people that you've never met before. It's like such a special little moment, like seeing them and like shaking their hand and like getting a sense of their aura. It's like, it's all good stuff, man. It's all fun. So, yeah.
I wanted to jump in and use that opportunity to ask a question that's come from the chat here from Main C. I think it's a fantastic question. And that is, what is the best catalyst to bring a community together?
I'll jump in if nobody. Yeah, go ahead, David. Go.
You sure?
Yeah. Jump in. Mine's gonna be controversial, so I'll wait a second.
Well, now I want to hear it.
All right. Go ahead.
This is how me and Michael's podcast went. By the way, we just kind of riffed back and forth like that. The best catalyst to bring people together, I think that a very overused word today is passion. Is like follow your passion, and like it's this really fluffy kind of rainbow-esque kind of word that's being tossed out. But like when you go to bed at night or when you wake up in the morning, like what makes you want to like live and thrive and pursue something? Like what do you love? Like deep down, I really think if people like focused in on that thought of like, what's going to make me excited to wake up tomorrow, and like surround yourself. We talked about that earlier. Surround yourself with those people, but like figure out what that is, whether it's 1-2 words or a sentence of like, I want to become the best footwear designer on the planet. Okay. And then create an olive tree with a bunch of branches as to like how to achieve that. And like, that should be the catalyst, is like what ultimately is going to bring you the most joy and happiness and make you freaking stoked to wake up. And like that community is what you should surround yourself with, because you're probably going to meet your husband or wife in that community. You're probably going to meet your best friend in that community, and you're probably going to meet other builders and other people with that same passion. I'm going to use the word passion there, that same like energy that you want to bring to the table. And so like passion is like, I don't know, like I'm passionate about strawberries. Like you can't build a community around strawberry. I mean, maybe you can, but like, do you want to be the best at X or Y or Z and like go after that? And I think there's like more people need to focus in on like true love within themselves of like, what is it that I want to accomplish and I want to do today and make today the best day that I can.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'll piggyback on that. I actually met my wife in a community. Like to bring it back to the running thing, like we, so I was, because again, I was trying to exercise, and I, got into my 30s and my body wasn't quite what it used to be. And I wanted to change that. And I couldn't, like, I was running on my own and it just wasn't doing anything. So I was like, I'll join this running group. And my only time I could do it was like, it met in Central Park at 6:30 in the morning. And it was like a winter's morning. And I'd go and I joined the wrong team because they were all like amazingly fast. And I was just way behind all of them. But it also turns out that this collection of people who are motivated to get up at 6:30 in the morning on a 20-degree Fahrenheit day is also an incredible group of people. And I met my wife there, and I made some like really close friends that are awesome, and that was amazing. So it's like joining these things, and it can really inspire you. Now, the controversial thing I was going to say, I'll get to that. So the catalyst to bringing communities, because I was like obsessed with this idea, right? Because I'd done Discord communities, and I'd done Facebook communities, and they're great because they bring together people from all over. But I wasn't like, when I was a part of them, I wasn't feeling buy-in from people. I wasn't feeling like connection, like, because people would kind of come and go, and there'd be like a lot of noise in there. And so my controversial thing, and somebody suggested this to me, and I did it, and it worked out really well. They were like, if you want to, people need to have a reason to be involved. And they were like, you have to find a motivation. They were like, here's what you do. Charge a little bit of money to be in the community. just a little bit. And I was like, but I don't want to profit off this thing. I have a job. I have a thing. Like, I can't, they're like, okay. They're like, figure out a way, something cool to do with the money. So I was like, okay, I'll pool all the money together. Like I said, well, I don't make any money off of my community. I don't profit at all from it. But the idea is that if people just give $20 a month, and it's enough to make them be like, I need to get value out of this. And it's enough for me as the leader to be like, they're putting money in. I need to like make sure I'm delivering value to them. And it creates this like system where you kind of filter out the people who aren't 100% into the idea. And like David said, my community is not big. I don't care about the size of it. I don't want 1 million people in there. We've got about 50, 60 people in there right now, and they're all like super passionate about the thing, and it creates a really good environment. So it's like, for me, like, how do I, go back to the question, the best catalyst? It's like $20 a month was the best catalyst that I could think to do it, because you have to create buy-in from everybody in order, like, everyone has to have kind of skin in the game, and like, because they get that email every month that's like, hey, $20 is about to get charged to your credit card for being a part of this thing. Like, oh man, I can't just ignore it forever. Because I don't know about you, but I'm like, there's been a number of times I've been like, oh, that's a cool thing on Discord, I'll join that, and then it just becomes this icon off to the side that I never really check. But yeah, it's created. It's a buy model, and it's a thing too, because it's like a little bit of a point of distinction, because so many things, like every social media thing out there, is free. I don't know why a social media company doesn't just charge a little bit, because all they care about is like monthly users. And like, again, if you don't care about that and you just care about quality over quantity, then all of a sudden it's like, wait a second, if we charge a little bit, maybe we don't need these like really awkward ads all over the place. Maybe we can just like build something that's kind of cool for the community. And it's like, yeah, then you can just do that. So it's cool. All right, that was my controversial thing. Money is the buy-in that I said.
Well, it's interesting, right? I think it's really interesting. I mean, what about yourself, Julia? What was the catalyst for Magic Fabric, or what do you believe is an interesting catalyst in general?
Well, I think that there's something to the genuinity part. I mean, if you do something that you really, really care about, that's going to come off, like that's going to show. So I do think it's going to be hard to build a good community, and just for sort of sole commercial purpose, or just someone else, sort of an employer tells you to. It needs to come from a genuine standpoint, I think. And that's definitely been the case for me. I did not plan on building a community. It just kind of happened. But I also, I feel like, now I'm just going to end there. We're running out of time.
Yes, we are. And I do want to interject, if that's okay, because we've talked a lot about all of our examples have been from your communities and your creative networks. And I did want to make sure that people knew where to find you. So if we could just do a quick fire around the room, where can people actually connect with you guys? Talking to that, if that's all right, starting with yourself, David.
I'm David Filar on everything. The only social media app I don't use is Snapchat, I'm pretty sure. But other than that, just my name. Somebody once told me, if you have a unique last name, like lean into it and like leverage it, because people will remember you more. And so davidfilar.com, david.filar on Instagram, David Filar on Twitter or X or whatever it is. An Untold Narrative on YouTube if you want to listen to the podcast, or on Spotify. And then I know we have 30 seconds, but somebody asked, like, how can I establish myself as a fashion or garment designer in the Gravity Sketch community? Like, DM other Gravity Sketch designers. Like Joey Camus does a lot of sneakers in Gravity Sketch, and like DM being like, hey, like, I'm looking to get into this. And like, they're going to want to help. And so just like ask for help. We talked about that a little bit. But anyway, I'll get off my high horse.
Julia.
Where you find me, you can find me on LinkedIn or Instagram, or email me through the website magicfabricblog.com.
And Hector?
Yeah, I am on Instagram and LinkedIn. On Instagram, it's Hectorius. And then on LinkedIn, it's just Hector Silva. But if you find me on Instagram, you'll find everything else I do, because everything that I talk about is about other people, not about me. So cheers.
Thank you. And Michael, we'll end with yourself.
And like David, I have a unique last name. So Michael Tanzillo is my social handles. I'm usually on LinkedIn. That's usually the best place to reach me. So if you want to reach out and send a message. My newsletter and community are both the 3D Artist newsletter and the 3D Artist community. I'm very creative at naming things. And so, yeah, you can find the community on School. But yeah, if you have questions or need anything, just LinkedIn is the best place to reach out to me.
I think all of our DMs are wide open for anybody who is seeking support.
Yeah.
Guys, that's hugely appreciated. And I would love to just close out by just saying a big thank you to you for just joining us today. There's a huge amount of value that's been brought to the table in terms of prompting us to be more engaged with different communities, inspiring us to share a little bit more. We touched on that. And the importance of actually building creative networks, which I think is really, really relevant for all of us during this time. So, and also I just wanted to say there's a real authenticity. The red thread for me from all of your communities is authenticity. You guys truly are into making a difference and inspiring people and helping each other, helping people to better themselves. And that's hugely appreciated. So thank you very, very much.